Good afternoon, Ambassador Gor. Welcome to the Economic Times World Leadership Forum. Uh, though this is your first time physically present, let me tell you, when the announcement came last time from White House that you were being sent as ambassador here, um, you were present in spirit, literally, because the whole room was talking about who is Sergio Gor, and that we seem to have at that point started off on a wrong foot with the Trump administration second time around, unexpectedly. So I just wanted your broad overview and what have you done to fix it?
Well, thank you for having me here today, Pranab. It's great to be here with the Economic Times, and I actually cut my trip short to come back here, as you and
Thank you.
I spoke at the at-home reception just a couple days ago. But I was determined to be here, so thank you for having me here today. I see some friends in the audience, including the great ambassador from Canada. Always happy to see you and along others with these bright lights. Look. The relationship is is very important to us. And the fact that our president and Prime Minister Modi have such a deep and personal friendship makes it a lot easier for me, frankly. Because it's one of those things, as you might have seen in public. I traveled with President Trump to the G7 2 months ago in Evian, and they brought in the cameras. And I'll share this anecdote with everybody here. We were behind the scenes, behind the stage, and at one point, it was just the president and I, and he asked me, he goes, "What are the Indians going to raise?" And we went over some topics. And he said, "Did they have any asks?" And the MEA had one ask. He said, and it was, let's bring in the media, but let's not do a full press conference, no questions. And so I told the president, I said, the Indians prefer no questions. He said, sure, no problem. So the meeting starts, the press comes in, there must have been 50 cameras. The president's sitting here, the prime minister's sitting there. They both speak for a few minutes. As soon as they get done, the first thing the president does, he looks up at the camera and says, "Any questions?" And that opened everything up. And he did a 45-minute press conference, and everything was on the table. And one of the things that they asked him was exactly what you just asked me. And the thing that the president said is, as long as my friend Prime Minister Modi is there, India will get what they need. And that is a true testament. And I'll tell you why. Because when the president was out, those 4 years, and I was with him down in Florida, a lot of people from around the world criticized the president. India did not. Your prime minister did not. And that's something the president remembers. So he holds that friendship in a very special place. When you're up, when you're in Oval Office, everybody wants to be your friend. But when you're out, that's when you can really realize who your friends are. And Prime Minister Modi was a true friend to him at that time. And so that makes this relationship work because they trust each other. It doesn't mean they agree on everything 100% of the times, right? Anyone here in our own family, you're going to have some disagreements. And sometimes with our family, we're much more honest with each other than publicly. So, but that relationship is anchored on that trust and on that friendship. And so my job is to bring to his attention what it is that we need to be working on. And so from a year ago to today, I've been able to raise that. I've been encouraging both sides to speak regularly, almost on a monthly basis. There's a point of contact, whether it's in person at the G7 or on the phone or a vice president calling him, and other high level visits. So Secretary Rubio came here. He was here for 5 days. It was his
Contact
longest
at the
trip.
political level, you're saying.
Political levels, correct. So India matters to us, and we want to have the highest individuals from our government being here and participating. So not only was Secretary Rubio here for 5 days in May, he's coming back for another several day trip in October, right? That's unheard of for us.
Okay. That's
So
that's that's great. So, but just to be clear, you're saying that President Trump actually thinks that Prime Minister Modi stood by him during even the difficult times.
correct. I think the prime minister was very clear, and it's one of those things you can look at the records. You can look at what European leaders said. You won't find those same comments coming out of India, and so they genuinely like each other. I mean that. And not all leaders are created equal. Our president and our prime minister get along great. In a way, they're very similar. They're both forward-leaning, and they want action fast, and they're results-driven. And so our president has tremendous respect for the prime minister.
Thank you for that. That was quite elaborative and revealing at many points. Uh, uh, I want to just take, we have a business audience over here. Uh, So very quickly, Ambassador, what is the economic trajectory of our relationship, especially the energy side?
That nobody gets interrupted. They just keep going. No matter what, you just keep talking. But I'll be watching the news, and I used to think we have a fake news problem back home. Some of the things that get reported here are just nowhere close to the ballpark. And one of the things that you might have seen, this was public. At one point, there was a story that came out that the trade deals had collapsed. And I called my good friend Piyush Goyal and I said, "What are they talking about? Oh, you and I were in the same meeting. There was only 6 people." And so I told him, I said, "I'm going to put something up publicly." He did the exact same thing. Rarely has a minister here in India put out something calling out fake news, right? But when you kind of have 6 people that all agree on one thing, but the news reports something else and it's all anonymous sources, it's worth pointing that out. Um, the numbers don't lie. If you look at the trajectory of our relationship, um, just go by the numbers. And so 15 years ago, our bilateral trade was $20 billion. Today, it's $240 billion. That's not an accident. And it's continuing to grow. The two leaders set an ambitious goal of $500 billion in the next few years. We're on our way to getting there. The relationship is as strong as it's ever been, in spite of what the media might tell you. If you look at the energy imports that India is getting, it's unmatched. If you compare to a year ago, what India is importing from the United States, look, the numbers don't lie, right? And this is not a dig at the Economic Times because I think you guys are great, but I love getting home in the evening and putting on the Indian shows in the evening. And the later it gets, the crazier the shows become. And so 6 p.m. you might have 8 people arguing, but by 10 p.m. it gets really good. There's 12 people on there, and they're all speaking at the exact same time, and you can't hear a single one of them. And I mean, they must train because it's unbelievable that nobody gets interrupted. They just keep going. No matter what, you just keep talking. But I'll be watching the news, and I used to think we have a fake news problem back home. Some of the things that get reported here are just nowhere close to the ballpark. And one of the things that you might have seen, this was public. At one point, there was a story that came out that the trade deals had collapsed. And I called my good friend Piyush Goyal and I said, "What are they talking about? Oh, you and I were in the same meeting. There was only 6 people." And so I told him, I said, "I'm going to put something up publicly." He did the exact same thing. Rarely has a minister here in India put out something calling out fake news, right? But when you kind of have 6 people that all agree on one thing, but the news reports something else and it's all anonymous sources, it's worth pointing that out. Um, the numbers don't lie. If you look at the trajectory of our relationship, um, just go by the numbers. And so 15 years ago, our bilateral trade was $20 billion. Today, it's $240 billion. That's not an accident. And it's continuing to grow. The two leaders set an ambitious goal of $500 billion in the next few years. We're on our way to getting there. The relationship is as strong as it's ever been, in spite of what the media might tell you. If you look at the energy imports that India is getting, it's unmatched. If you compare to a year ago, what India is importing from the United States, it's up by over 60% LPG, LNG. If you look at our pharma imports from India, our generic pharmaceuticals, we get 40% from India. If you look at military exercises, India has more military exercises with the United States than any other country, period. Not even close. And so when you look at these things, I agree with you. We do need stability. We do need certainty. We hear that from both sides. We hear that in India. We hear that in Washington. The trade deal is well on the way. In fact, within a month of me getting here, at one point we announced that we had a deal. The Supreme Court struck down a big part of what the deal was based on, the IEPA laws. So right now we're reconfiguring some of that text. But the trade deal is, in principle, almost everything is done. A lot of it is the legal technical language that needs to be sorted out. So I'm optimistic that we'll get done. In the last year, we've made tremendous progress with India, and that's a testament to the MEA here, to Dr. Jaishankar, to Piyush Goyal, to all these individuals who are invested in this relationship. What we do here over these few years will define this relationship for several decades ahead, period. This relationship will define the global stage. You have two of the biggest giants in business. You have two of the biggest economies. Us working together is a natural partnership. And you can look decade by decade and forget the daily bumps and the daily tweets and whatever you might hear. The relationship's been doing this decade by decade and growing. And I'm determined that it'll continue on that trajectory.
Your counsel on the bill, which is the 100% tariff bill, how do we read it over here?
Look, the bill is being pushed by Congress, right, in a very bipartisan way. This is not something that you have seen the White House advocate for. And I think that's important to understand is people here say, President Trump is pushing this. You, you won't find a clip of President Trump pushing it. We'll see ultimately what happens with it. It passed the Senate. It passed the Senate in an overwhelmingly bipartisan vote. And again, why is it moving ahead? And the reason is, of course, it impacts India, but the underlying cause is the president from day one has been wanting to end this war between Russia and Ukraine, and he's determined to bring an end to it. And so it's vitally important to us that at some point this war has to stop. It's week after week. You watch what is happening over there. It's a travesty on both sides, and so it's a tool in his toolkit to curb some of these funds from stemming and going over there.
You understand. I was there at that time when Secretary Rubio came, and you had this wonderful function at Bharat Mandapam. You brought Quad back into center stage. My question is, what is the future of Quad when there is this conversation of a US-China G2 to understand what is the centrality of Quad in the US strategic vision now that we hear that Indo is also removed from, I know you clarified that, but the Indo-Pacific terminology is going some change. The real question is the centrality of the Quad and where does it stand in the context of US-China G2?
Look, I think that the two are not necessarily always connected. Our relationship with China is our relationship with China, right? And that's our bilateral relationship. And we want to get along. We want to get along with everyone around the world. The secretary has me heavily involved in the Quad, so I've traveled with him both to ASEAN, which was the last Quad ministerial meeting in Manila just last month. The secretary will be coming here to India, but after India, we're actually going to continue, and he's going to travel to Australia, and that'll be another Quad meeting. And so we're on track to have 5 things. The reason the Quad exists is those are trusted partners. And people made a big deal here on the name change. I don't care what's on top of a letterhead. Look at where the commitment is and look at where the US is investing and what it is prioritizing. And so even before the secretary comes here in October, we're going to be having working level meetings on deliverables, on things that we can move forward, and whether that's enhanced naval security exercises, whether that's investing in ports in the Pacific. The reality is those 4 countries in the Quad are vitally important to each other, and those are the main players in that.
So thank you for the explanation on that. The other real concern coming out in India is that we've seen a growing profile for Pakistan in the Middle East. And aware of the adversarial relationship between India and Pakistan. And now we've had this Mecca Pact, where there is a NATO-like collective defense clause. How should India, and the US has backed it, so how should India see it as a threat or what? Because at the end of it, we do have an adversarial relationship with Pakistan.
Well, I think that's a great question for your next guest, Dr. Jay Shankar. I'll let him comment on how India sees this. The one thing I will say is India's got great relations with Saudi Arabia, right? And so they're part of this. But again, I'll defer to the wise wisdom of Dr. Jay Shankar to comment on that. For us, we have bilateral relationships with everyone around the world. And the reality is, whether we like it or not, we have to work with the governments that are there. And so, yes, so that the president has engaged with everyone around the world, including some of your neighbors here. But if we don't necessarily compare countries. And so our relationship with India is our relationship with India. It is solid. It is huge. In a way, it's unmatched in the region virtually when you look at trade or defense exercises or pharma. Pick any sector, and the United States and India are working on it. So 2 weeks ago, we had a team from NASA here, and we invited ISRO to join us in our future going back to the moon missions. We can invite other countries, but it doesn't mean they can get there. India can actually get there, so it matters more. And so pick any sector: aviation, military, pharma, energy. The US are working hand in hand. You can't say that about a lot of other countries in the world. The infrastructure is not there, the talent is not there. So we have so much going for this relationship. I had an ambassador call me recently from another country. I'm not going to mention which, but a U.S. ambassador, and he's been there almost the exact same time that I've been here. And he said to me, "I'm bored." I said, "You're bored?" I said, "I don't have enough hours in my day." And but that's the dynamic relationship that we have here. It doesn't exist everywhere in the world. I could see how some of our ambassadors might not have not 10% of what is happening here. And so to me that's extremely gratifying.
You've been traveling a lot in India, some salubrious climbs. How has it been?
So I love traveling. Period. I've traveled my whole life. I've been to 96 countries now. The reason I wanted to be ambassador to India is because I came to India the first time 15 years ago, and so I wanted to be in India for two reasons. One is the incredible potential that India has, and I keep talking about limitless potential, and I mean it. When you look back, remember where you are today, and look at it 10 years ago, what you're going to see between the United States and India will be at a level that is hard to imagine. What we're seeing with AI, with data centers, there's a reason all these companies are coming here and Indian companies are going back to the United States. So you have all the embassies compete to bring funding to the US. We came in first. You have a European embassy that gets up and they'll announce $700 million in investments. And you have another Asian country that'll get up and announce $2 billion. We brought in over $20 billion just in the last 9 months or so, investments into the US. And on the flip side, whether it's Microsoft or Micron or Google, all of them are opening up hubs here in India. There's a reason for that. It's a great and it's a national partnership. So one of the reasons I wanted to be here is that potential, which is unmatched. It literally is unmatched around the world. The second reason is when I came here 15 years ago and I traveled with my parents all over India, India presented an incredible wow vision to me. And so whether it's the culture, it's the history, it's the food, but it's also the people. You will meet some of the friendliest people when you travel around India. The more people that I bring to India, and there's not a week that doesn't go by that I don't have visitors. And all these people have never been to India before, but when they come here and they see the India that I saw, and we have to get out of Delhi. I always tell them, I say, you got to get out of Delhi. Coming to Delhi doesn't count as coming to India. It's important. It's the government's here, but if you want to experience true India, get out of there, get out of here, and see something. And it's one of the reasons the secretary is coming back. Every single week, I have visitors coming. I got people arriving today on the 2 a.m. flight. I've memorized the time schedule of the flights that are coming from the U.S. because every week we have visitors.
Your visits are followed very closely, as you must have noticed.
So,
Uh, anyhow, for the Indian youth, US is an aspirational place. We go there for education, jobs, but the political landscape of the US has changed, and whether Indians are welcome, not welcome. How should the Indian youth look at this aspirational index that it has followed for so many years? Because I'm sure you're dealing with visa requests and things like that. How should Indian youth look at the new US or the changing political landscape of the US?
well, you call it change. I'm not necessarily sure. I'd go that far. I'll address two things. One is with this administration, President Trump was very clear that we want a safe and secure border, and that includes knowing who comes in. So that's not targeted at India. But today, when students apply to visit the United States, one of the things we look at is online presence. So what is that person? What have they been saying online, whether that's Twitter or YouTube or any other forum? And unfortunately, and this is not targeted towards India, but the days of you tweeting death to America and then showing up at an embassy asking for a visa are over. We're not going to let you in. And so and by the way, India does the exact same thing. When you're coming here applying for a visa, you get asked all sorts of questions. And several people plenty of people get denied, frankly. And that's India's right. You should be able to determine who is allowed into your country. In previous administration, we had millions of individuals who would overstay their visas in the United States. So today, that is a top priority for this administration. It is a top priority that we secured our southern border. We would have millions of individuals pouring in across the southern border. We didn't know who they are, where they're from, what they're doing. And a lot of that, by the way, it translated into nefarious activities. Not everybody wants to come through the southern border to visit Disneyland. And so every country has a right to know who's coming in. I've heard your prime minister speak. You could pull sentences out of his speech and put them in President Trump's speech because they're identical. that no country should be forced to take another country's illegal immigrants. And so we fully agree with that. In terms of students that you mentioned, there is such a high demand of Indian students wanting to go to the United States, and they do very well at our schools. Um, One of the things that I've started looking at is actually bringing U.S. institutions to India. The demand is there. Just last night, I was speaking with the provost of MIT. We have a great amount of universities that are interested in coming here, and I'm determined over the next year that we will have some of that happen. And we're talking to the top schools, whether that's NYU, Harvard, Purdue. We're going to see some of that happening over the near future, and we're confident that that'll happen.
But if it is a one-line message to Indian talent, young talent, which has played a role in the United States, what would that be?
A one line. It's hard to summarize in one line, but look, it's the United States wants to work with India. Period. Right. That's what it comes down to. That's been the president's message, and that extends to the youth, but it extends beyond also. And so you pick any U.S. company, there's incredible Indian talent. So whether that's Google or Microsoft or Micron, those are good things that we're working together on, and that's something that'll continue to happen. The people-to-people ties are incredible; they're unmatched. There's such a high demand of people that wanting to go to the United States that makes it difficult, frankly. India's just such a massive place. It would be impossible for us to accommodate the whole world. There's a study out there by the Pew Research Foundation. And it's a couple of years old. But the Pew Foundation did a poll around the world, and they asked, how many of you would want to move to the United States tomorrow, globally? And the number was over 900 million. That's impossible for us to take 900 million in 1 year, right? So that's not going to happen. And so for us, we want people that contribute to the United States. We want people that contribute to this relationship. That's something that's happened. That'll continue to happen. And I'll tell you this: the demand has not gone down because it's very hard to get an appointment, even for a visa today.
Yeah, I know
Uh,
that. On that note, sir, thank you so much. And it was a great pleasure to have you. And thank you for making time for the
Of
Economic
course.
Times. And we hope to see you more often, both in our events and in our newspaper.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much for having me today. Thank you.